Fala galera do canal, me chamo Julián e o vídeo de hoje será sobre a desdolarização. Recebi vários pedidos para postar mais vídeos sobre o assunto, então eu consegui achar mais esse. Então já deixe seu like, inscreva-se no nosso canal para ajudar na divulgação e valeu!
A lot of talk of de-dollarization as more countries around the world can't and don't want to trade in US dollars. But which currency will replace the US dollar? Now, some people are asking, could even China's currency make a serious dent on the US dollar? My answer to this question for years has been no one currency will replace the US dollar. It will be a number of currencies as we have increasing multipolarity. That's true with currencies, it's true with geopolitics, it's true when you ask where's the next place where successful people are going to want to move. The answer is there are more options than ever. Some people are going to move to Dubai, some are going to move to Singapore, some are going to move to Belgrade, Serbia, some are going to move to somewhere really far flung. There are so many options out there. What we're seeing is the breakdown of these great powers. But China wants to capture a slice of those US dollars. And I recently came across an article in Hong Kong's South China Morning Post. They asked, can China's yuan, now a familiar face around the world, become a must-have currency? And one of the numbers in this article is truly shocking. They say China's yuan has become more acceptable to foreign countries, but authorities still maintain tight control of fund flows under its capital account. That is true. So the story goes that when China's homegrown ARJ-21 regional jet was delivered to Indonesian airline Transnusa this past May, the leasing deal was carried out not in dollars, not in euros through one of the Irish subsidiaries that leases aircraft, but using the yuan, with an arrangement hailed as a milestone in the internationalization of the Chinese currency. So you have a number of countries, a number of companies getting into the aircraft game in a bigger way, partially off the back of Boeing having a lot of problems, and partially off the back of just these countries want to be bigger players in important industries. The article quotes the Shanghai government, who says that this pioneering transaction highlights the high level of openness in the Lingang special area, promoting yuan internationalization and strengthening international cooperation. The aircraft was exported through the Lingang region, a free trade zone in southeast Shanghai that was set up in 2019 to promote foreign investment and financial opening up. China's growing economic influence in trade with the rest of the world has made the yuan more acceptable to foreign countries compared to 20 years ago when Beijing first began to experiment easing its capital controls. Now, what have we said was also happening about 20 years ago at the turn of the century? About 1/4 as many countries in the world were sanctioned by the U.S. government. It's been the century of sanctions. And what have we also told you in the last 20 or so years? Places you never would have lived in, never would have invested in, never would have thought of, have now become, if not household names, serious contenders. Who took Dubai seriously at the turn of the century? And before you know it, people are moving there, and a lot of things are happening. And there's a lot of places that don't get nearly the press that Dubai gets. Those are the places that we talk about. Those are the places that we share with our clients. If you're looking for a place to diversify your assets, lower your taxes, protect your freedom, have a plan B, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We have more options than anybody. I was just sitting next to the CKO, our chief knowledge officer on a flight, pops up, oh, we got an alert about the corporate tax rate increasing in Eswatini. We keep our eye on more places than I think anybody else in the industry, and this is why we realize there's more options out there. And so the bottom line is, there are so many different players in the game now compared to when I was born. There were a few geopolitically and financially important countries in the world, and the rest were just kind of struggling to make it. That is a dramatically different situation today. That can benefit you if you choose to get your residences and citizenships and diversify your money in banks and choose to set up your offshore trust and just choose to take advantage of all the world has to offer. That's what we help our clients do. But China's playing the same game. In the first half of 2024, the yuan made up 52% of China's cross-border payments and receipts, compared with 43% for the US dollar. So, just this year, 52% of cross-border payments are in Chinese renminbi, in the yuan, only 40% in the US dollar. There's a 9% delta. This is what the article calls the yuan's share in China's cross-border payment climbing significantly. Here's why. 10 years ago, not 20 years ago, not turn of the century, 10 years ago, the figures stood at 23 and 67% respectively. That's according to Bank ANZ. So from 23 to 52%. That's a game changer. They didn't just flip. They flipped and blew the delta wide open. So what you're seeing is countries around the world increasingly willing to accept the yuan in trade. What does that tell you? Well, what it tells you is, I grew up in the United States. If you're sitting in the US, if you're sitting in Canada, if you're sitting in Australia, the UK, some Western country, and you're watching Western TV and you have Western friends, and your world is pretty much in the West, you would think, who wants this Chinese thing? The world tells us China's terrible. Who wants to deal with them? They're the worst. Well, the so-called entire global South, these emerging countries that are pretty much non-aligned, Africa, increasingly South America, very much increasingly Asia. We just saw numbers recently. Malaysia, 75% of Malaysians, some of the nicest people, they said if we had to choose between the U.S. and China, 75% would choose China. Now, do you think they're all voting against their best interest? Or do you think maybe they know something or they think something about China that the West does not? And so whether you agree with them or not, they're going to be more likely as China offers them better deals. And we've seen that. It's been a big theme from African countries. China gives us a better deal. I keep seeing story after story after story, not just from the South China Morning Post in Hong Kong, but from papers all around the world. I follow a lot of news in Africa, the Middle East. And, hey, China's bringing us a better deal. It's not just about the geopolitics. It's about the trade. So you can like it, you can not like it. You can say, oh, they're making a mistake. Well, this is what's happening. From 23% to 52%, more than double, dramatically flipped it. And with China's pursuit of building the world's second largest economy into a financial power, a strong currency and infrastructure are key. That's one of the things that China didn't have. They get this currency, it's controlled, who wants it? Well, the countries that have been shut out by the U.S. And again, let's go back to when I was born. Turned 40 this year. Go back to when I was born, before the Berlin Wall fell. Very different world in just 40 years. The U.S. figured, hey, whomever we don't like, we'll use our might and we'll just shut them out. And they'll be eating bugs, because what's the competition? Soviet Union was on its last leg, collapsed. I remember being a kid, I told you, watching stuff in elementary school. Oh, here's the Chinese, they're riding bicycles to work. They ain't riding bicycles anymore. The world has changed, and so all those countries that the U.S. used to say, we don't like you. Maybe we tried to invade your country or topple your regime and we couldn't do it. Number one, those countries have grown a lot faster than the West. They've gotten together, they've gotten more confident, and they've said, okay, what's our solution? We're not going to do the U.S. We're not going to involve the U.S. What's the U.S. answer? Well, there's a symbiotic relationship between the government that people elect and the attitude they take and the actual people themselves. I'll tell you what we see, even right here on this channel, is arrogant people who say, well, if they don't want to do things our way, we don't need it. We're better. We don't need these hellhole countries. Okay, well, what happens when all the quote-unquote hellhole countries get together and they are more than half of the world's population? Look at Brics. It's a big chunk of the population. You got, 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion. There's just a couple new countries, added 6, 7, 100 million in each country. They have something like 3.5 billion countries out of the 10 that are now in what they call Brics Plus. You think they don't want to make more money? You think they don't see everything with the internet and people are getting wealthier and more people are getting into the middle class? You think that they just want to stay where they're at? Whether you like it or you agree with them or not, that's a big force to be reckoned with.
Então, é mais um vídeo que vai falar da desdolarização, fala dos BRICS e do poder dos BRICS. Você pode até não gostar, não concordar ou achar assim que não vai mudar muita coisa, porém para muitos especialistas o BRICS é o ponto de partida para uma mudança assim global. Se vai acontecer ou não, não sabemos, porém é o que muitos especialistas estão apontando. E se você não segue no meu Instagram, por favor, siga lá, porque eu já postei 4 ou 5 matérias inéditas que eu não postei aqui no canal, no mesmo modelo, matérias internacionais, informações internacionais que envolvem o Brasil, ou seja, tá assim, algo bastante legal. Então, se você não segue, por favor, siga, até para me dar uma ajudinha. Então, o vídeo foi esse, espero que tenham gostado, deixe seu like, inscreva-se no nosso canal para ajudar na divulgação, comente o que você achou sobre tudo isso e valeu!